Here we go. This is the second interview for Live Work Anywhere site, and I'm super excited to have Stephen Warley with us here out of Boston. But Stephen is the co-founder of Unstuckable.co, and Stephen's on a mission to save people from themselves. He's researching the habits that get people unstuck and make them unstuck so they can achieve any big goal that they want in life. Check out unstuckable.co. He just launched it April 1st of this year, and it quickly rose to one of the top podcasts on iTunes. I strongly recommend you check out his podcast. Welcome, Stephen, to the second interview.
Thank you so much, and I'm so honored to be the second interview and to be following Andrew Warner.
That's right. Andrew is the first. You're the second. And I'm very honored to have you here. And I thought right away about you because of our conversation in. Not only do I love your work, but I also thought about our conversation at Blog World NMX this year, where you said you told me that you in the middle of work you decided to buy a ticket to Spain and you made a quick decision, bought a ticket, and just left. And I'm not saying it properly, but can you tell me more about that?
There's a little more background.
Okay.
There was some quick actions, but I was thinking about it for quite a long time. I will have to admit, but it's good because I think a lot of people think about doing a big thing like that for a while, but then they never do it, right?
Right.
So I always had this idea that I want to live in Spain. I have no idea. You love Spain. We have that connection, right? You spent a lot of time there. I've gone there, I think 5 or 6 times now. In 2010, I lived there for 4 months, 2 different trips. And at that time, this was 2010, I had an online sales training company for the broadcasting industry. It's called localbroadcastsales.com, where I sold all this online sales training to radio and television broadcasters all over the United States. So at that time, I was like 3 years old. It was a great business, paid me well, great opportunity, my first business that I built. But I started not being so excited about working with that particular community or talking about digital advertising. I kind of wanted something more, but I didn't know what. And I was also, I wanted to enjoy some of the benefits of a passive income business, which I didn't even know that's what I had, until I listened to Pat Flynn, a couple of years later. I'm like, oh, I did this. I didn't know I was doing it. And at that time in 2010, I was down to like spending as little as 15 to 20 hours a week running that business. And I had 4 employees. And so it was great, but I wanted the benefits of like, well, I'm going to see if I can go live somewhere else and run this thing from somewhere else. So I was kind of flying on the wings of the sun, very cautiously, because I had taken it was one of my primary income streams, something I built. I was employing people, so I didn't want to mess it up, but I did want to go somewhere else. So I decided that I'm like, you know what, I do want to go to Spain.
Where were you at the time that you made this decision? You were in Boston?
I was still living in Boston, yes.
Okay.
And where the decision was born is the previous year, it was 2009. We had a very long and hard winter, and it rained every single day that June. And I said, next year, I'm going to be somewhere on the first day of spring where the temperature's above 70. And I came through on my promise. I arrived. I think it was the day after healthcare legislation was passed. I remember it was out the front page of the news, even in Spain. I think it was like March 21st. And I was in Seville, and it was, 75 degrees and sunny.
You did it. You
I did
accomplished it.
And then to get the ball rolling, I had been already subconsciously restructuring some projects from that point. I'm like, by that June, I kind of knew I wanted to do something like this. Where I really pulled the trigger was that December. I was visiting my parents in Florida, and I was like, okay, how do I figure this out? I got to live somewhere. There must be extended stay apartments. So I just went to Google, typed in extended stay apartment Seville. I wanted to be in Seville because I wanted to be in a city. I wanted to be where it was going to be warm, relatively close to the beach. That's why I picked that part of Spain. And I also wanted a chance. I had studied Spanish for so long. I wanted the opportunity to practice my Spanish. So I did a Google search. The first link that came up was Sevilla5.com. And I actually became very good friends with these people.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
it's funny where a Google search will lead you. And it was like within an hour, I was looking at apartments on their website. I found one that was in my price range, very centrally located, booked it. And I was committed to go. I did it for 6 weeks. It was going to be the last 2 weeks of March and the 4 weeks of April.
Okay, so backing up, so this is great. So it in a rainy winter, I love how it started with the weather because, um, I mean, I moved to Seattle because I love the rain, but really, at a certain point, rain can get to you, and weather can affect
Oh,
your productivity, and it can affect your mood, and there's a lot of factors. So it
as
started.
I'm getting older, it's affecting me more. Even
Yeah,
this last winter, I
yeah.
never thought I'd be one of those people that have some sort of seasonal depression disorder, but I don't think I do.
Well, it really affects it. I think it affects your mood, but it also really affects your productivity.
Yeah.
There's studies done on the ultimate the not ultimate what's the word I'm looking for, perfect temperature essentially for you to have the right working conditions, and if it's above or below, it really starts to affect the output. So I'm a
And
big
that's why
believer.
nothing gets done in southern Spain because it's
That's
always too
right.
darn hot.
That's right. Lots of dancing though.
And do you know, like they serve even in the heat of summer, all the red wine is served chilled because it's so hot. You can't just leave it out.
Oh, it'll spoil, huh?
Yeah,
Oh, so you had to drink it quickly too, right? You had to drink
that's right.
lots of. Okay, but so it took you. You thought about it a year before, so it took you were kind of a year in planning, and then it was getting closer to the date. And I'm curious about that. You said, okay, I promised myself, I'm definitely going to do this, or what kept you committed? Because I know a lot of us say we're going to do this, and then we don't
It's who I
necessarily.
am. When I
Okay,
make my mind up on something, I always follow through. One of my friends says your tagline should be Stephen makes it happen.
Steven
Like
makes it happen.
if you want something done, you give it to me. It will get done. And I'm not going to get it done A plus perfection level because I don't believe in that. I think it's a waste of time. I get it a B plus and A minus. I get it done. That's what I do. And
Okay.
I do these things because you can keep thinking about these things over and over again. There's never, as my mom always says, there's never a good time to do anything in life. There's never a good time to go on vacation. There's never, you just got to do it. And you figure it out and everything falls into place. And it all worked out. I mean, that one, now I call it my Spanish adventure, has totally taught me how to live completely differently, be untethered, even when I came home in my domestic life.
Okay.
I ended up marrying a woman who was living in Pittsburgh. So I met Carrie, my wife, at a wedding 3 weeks before I was going to go back to Spain for
Oh
10
wow.
weeks. She lived in Pittsburgh, I live in Boston. Under normal circumstances, this would have never gone anywhere. But now I had shown myself that I can live and work anywhere. I was like, I called her up and was like, hey, what do you think if I came to Pittsburgh for the weekend before I went to Spain? She's like, great, let's do it. And then we kept in touch while I was in Spain. She picked me up at the airport when I came back, and I started flying there once a month and working there, working out of there for a week because if I could do work from Spain with time differences and cultural differences and iffy Wi-Fi, I could do Pittsburgh, right? And
Exactly.
here we are. We got married.
Hey, well, so this is great. I want to dive actually into these a little bit more because I think it's great that you're the make it happen type, and but I think a lot of people are as the date approaches, we say, okay, in 1 year I'm gonna start. I'm really gonna do this, and then a month approaches, and then you meet somebody at a wedding 3 weeks before who you really, I mean, she turned out to be your wife, right? So it's not common for you to say, okay, goodbye. Like we find all these excuses and all these reasons that'll hold us back. And so there's a lot of
You know
important
what? Can I
lessons in
stop
here.
you there for a
Yeah.
second? Because I think the woman I was previously dating was not excited at all about me going to Spain, and that's probably one of the reasons why that relationship didn't work out. So this is who I am, and it was kind of like a test. Like if she's cool with this,
Right.
wow, this is a woman that I'll do whatever you want. Then, right?
Right.
And afterwards, so that's a little background on that. It was important to me, and
What about
that's what
now?
I needed.
Or what would that conversation look like? Wait a minute. Let me finish my sentence. Like about a lot of people are already in relationships when they decide, hey, this is who I want to be. But obviously it's a big decision, and for both parties, having spousal support is incredibly important. How do you even approach that conversation with someone?
I think it's a lot of it's about good communication. It's about
Yeah.
expressing our needs, and I hope that Carrie and I are continually doing that. I mean, we are struggling to where we want to live long term because she would like to live in one part of the country, and I would like to live in another. But there's ways to work around that and compromise, right?
Sure.
And I think I do a lot of traveling even still for my work, so that's always been part of what it is. It's actually we have a very interesting relationship. So we had this long distance relationship, and Carrie is pursuing her doctorate, and so she works out of the house. So we went from long distance to living and working together every day.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we've like seen all extremes.
Right.
So I think with anything in life, with a big thing like that, you have. I think a lot of people just don't even have the conversation. They don't even say, "Honey, this is what I feel. I think I really need to do this. This is why. And this is the amount of time I think it's going to take. When it's presented in that way, rarely do I hear the other spouse say, no way. They'll be like, all right, this is a part of who you are. And maybe it also depends on what stage of the relationship you're in and stage of life. I'm going to be 40 in July. We're a little bit older. There's different things that we want to do. So it's all about priorities, right? And talking them out.
Right. No, that's great. So when you decided to go, so let's go back into when you decided to leave Spain. You had, again, perceived obstacles. So you had a team. You had four
Yep.
employees, you said?
Yep.
And what was the how did that work? How did you
I wanted them to come with me,
right?
and they didn't. I'm like, okay, I'm still going.
Okay.
So I think a big part of what I think I would like to think of myself as an entrepreneur is that I take myself out of processes as fast as I can. If you don't do that, you're just creating, you're not going to be free. I think a lot of times people are attracted to the idea of entrepreneurship because they want to be free, or at least financially free. And I want to be lifestyle free, right? So you have to early on take yourself out of those processes. So I had confidence in the people that I chose to work with me. I had confidence in how I trained them. And so I felt very comfortable. And I think that's the key. Even as I'm building Unstuckable with Chris Wilson, my business partner, we are building habits and processes and systems. That is what gives you freedom. It's not the money.
That's fantastic. So what kind of system would somebody need to create? Like what's the first step in creating this system? And I want to talk
Well,
about
it
a
has
little
to
bit
be
more about,
location free.
right?
So,
So what makes
all my speaking gigs that I did in person. So if people asked me to go around that time, I gently said, "What about here or there?" I never told any of my clients that I went, and a lot of my clients are online, right? So I still had all the communication using Skype, and I had a mobile phone if I needed it as a backup. I had my team. There was somebody who was already monitoring all of our community stuff. So number one, it has to be location free. Or if you have a type of business, you were just looking at if you can see my poster
That's right.
back there for Nagano, the Winter Olympics in 1998. I was gone for a month from my job. I was actually working at CBS News at the time. I was offered this position at CBS Sports for the month. My boss talked it out with her, had a grown-up conversation. She said, of course we're going to make this work for you. You should definitely go do this. And made it happen. So that is another internal way, a job within a company that I was provided that opportunity. I'm losing my train of thought.
So you didn't tell, I just want to back up for a
Oh,
second.
yeah.
You didn't tell your clients that you were
No.
going. So
To this day, they never know.
they still never know. Well, they're going to know now.
I did live webinars from Spain.
Oh, fantastic. And did you have any issues with the Wi-Fi? We're kind of going all over the place, but
Yes. No. But initially, that's such an important point. That was like the crucial thing. That's the number one thing I ask, even when I like renting a house on the Cape in the summer, is does it have good Wi-Fi? Does it have Wi-Fi? Like I will not rent this house if it doesn't have Wi-Fi. So that's and a lot of the apartments that you were going to rent in Seville did not have Wi-Fi. That was my first question. I wrote it in the email, and the guy who was running the company was a German guy, and he had an American partner. So by the grace of the universe, I was working with people who got what I needed, right? And otherwise, I'm pretty easy. So I was lucky. That first apartment had great Wi-Fi, had the passcode. Like that was the first thing. As soon as I got in there, I checked that, and immediately it was like relief. It was almost like a portal. It's almost like a life force. It's amazing. That one thing, the internet made that adventure, that choice possible. Without it, I don't know. It would be a very different decision to make.
so the number one criteria for you when you looked for anywhere to live is there
Wi-Fi.
strong Wi-Fi? And then you say, I need to create a system, trying to kind of dissect your process here. So you say, okay,
Sure.
I'm going to go to Spain and I'm going to go in 12 months. And as the month approaches, you say, okay, I'm going to find a place with strong Wi-Fi. I'm going to use Google to go find a place to stay.
Well, I
ahead
did
of
that.
time.
Actually, I did that 4 months ahead of time. So I had a place to stay. I had my plane ticket. The two big. Actually, it's interesting that you're bringing this out of me. I think the way I make decisions for a very large, we'll call this a project, I make the big decisions, what I call those trigger motivators, the ones where there's no turning back. You're asking a way to get people to want to really commit to something if they have trouble to, is to to find out what's your trigger. If you're a cheapskate, spend the money that's non-refundable because you're going to do it because you don't want to lose that money. Or if you're a person that, I don't know, I can't think of another kind of trigger. If you're a person who doesn't like letting other people down, so find a way that if you create the decision that you are going to let somebody down, so that way you'll go through with it. So we all have our own motivational triggers. You just have to be honest with yourself and understand what they are. Another one of mine is I cannot stand clutter. So if I need to get something done, like pay a paper bill, everything's online for me, but once in a while there's still a paper bill, or do something, I put it at my dining room table because
Stephen, we got stuck for a minute. Uh-oh. Hey, Stephen. Okay, there we go.
Yep, we're back.
You said you put it on your dining room table. Can you go back to that?
Yeah, so anytime I don't like clutter, so if I want to get something done, I put it on my dining room table. So instead of putting things on a to-do list and like driving my brain nuts to see all these other things go on my to-do list, part of what I need to do is I just put it on that dining room table, or I put it in my path of where I know I don't want to see it and I'm going to get it done because I'm very structured in that way.
That's fantastic. That's a great tip. Knowing your motivators, knowing your triggers, and being able to put yourself in a situation where you have to step through those hoops. I think that's really important. BJ Fogg.
Like this is a positive way of like
Right.
playing with your own emotions, manipulating yourself.
Manipulating yourself, but it's true. It really is true. You create your structure
Human.
routine. We're human, right? Right. And knowing yourself is really important. I agree with you. So going back to your process as well. So you booked a ticket. So you knew that if you bought a ticket, you would go through with it.
Definitely. I mean, but I'm the type of person I would have gone through it anyway. I mean, and then getting the ticket, getting the apartment. The next thing is when people want to do this, they don't think about how they're going to use their time. So I already knew that about myself of how I was going to structure my day. So you got to have some sort of morning routine. So the way I built in an automatic morning routine is I signed up for a Spanish class that met every day, Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning. So that way I had to go somewhere every morning and I want to refine my Spanish skills. So I spent 2 hours there and it wasn't that expensive. And it also gave me another opportunity to meet people because that's another thing. I'm a very social person. I want to meet people as well and be able to explore Seville with them.
Right. So let's talk about those are two very important areas: building community, finding people when you go there, but also figuring out where you're going to go, what you're going to do when you get there. But also schedule and routine. So when you were running your business or when you were working, you had a schedule and you had a daily routine. What did it look like here? Or what did it look like in stateside in Boston compared to what it looked like in Spain? And you just sort of talked about it, and I think you gave a really good tip. But what did your daily overall routine look like?
I think I did a lot of extra things stateside that I didn't need to do. Now, let me give you a day in the life of my Spanish day. So the Spanish, they call it in Seville the primera hora del día, the first hour of the day. It's 10 o'clock. I swear to God, people. It's not 8, it's not 9, it's 10.
10:30, give or take.
And then they have 11 o'clock break. I don't know what they could have done for an hour, and then they have their 3-hour siesta.
Right. It's great.
So, which is great to go to that extreme to see like, wow, these people are so relaxed. Like I needed that, right? So anyway, so there's a East Coast time. There is a 6-hour time difference. So until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm just living my Spanish day. Go to my class, have some lunch, go do something and still go for a nice long walk that afternoon. Then approximately 3 o'clock, maybe 4 o'clock, I could push it. I would come back and start what I call my American work day. I actually had really clear butt ends. I would have the same table. So it would almost look where my computer was. Actually, my whole periphery would almost look like what I had back home. So from about 3 to 4 until 9 o'clock at night, I would work for 4 to 5 hours, get what needed to get done, and not be distracted by all the other stuff because it's 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern time until about 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. One thing I learned is that you have all this wave of email energy that goes out in the morning. You can actually wait until about 10 o'clock to then go through all that because everybody else is crazy, like looking at email first. And then you see, even today, I see a drop-off in email after 3 o'clock because people are tired by then. They don't want to send out any more correspondence. And I was also really good about always staying one step ahead of my clients. They never really had to. I was really good at customer service and taking care of my work community. So that is a key. So I don't put out fires because I have systems, right? I don't run a business like that. So then about 9 o'clock, Spanish, go out for dinner for tapas.
Exactly.
Very convenient for me because I'm finishing up my workday on my American workday, and then I would go out for tapas, and they're pretty responsible. You're in bed by 11 or 12, and you can sleep until 9. I have never felt more productive in my life because I call it time arbitrage. I got to live 2 days in one, a Spanish day and an American day, and I continued to make money with my company and my business, and I got in a very relaxed way to have this great Spanish adventure. And then I had my entire weekends too to live my Spanish life.
And you were learning Spanish every day.
I'm learning Spanish every day, forced to, because in that part of Spain, people do not speak English. Can't say my Spanish is much better, but
that's the only way to do it. Side note,
Yeah,
I think that's the most important way to learn languages. Immerse yourself. You have to
absolutely.
buy food every day, right? So you have to go out and you have to interact. You have to
And
eat
it's fun,
tapas.
and there's an expat community everywhere in the world, and you meet all these different people, and also at the time, another social goal I had, I knew that there's. Oh, have we frozen again?
No, not on this side.
Okay.
There we go.
So there's a big festival every year called Feria, which is a big springtime festival in Spain. They have all these tents that are on a fairground. There's about 1,000 of them. They call them casetas. And everybody's family or business rents one of these things. Like the entire city like goes for a week to this fairground where you just sing and dance. All the women dress up in flamenco dresses. The really wealthy people take a horse and carriage to the festival. But of those 1,000 casetas, there's only 7 that are public. So you need to be invited to all the other ones. So I had a goal to say, who could I meet to get invited to go to these casetas?
Oh, fantastic.
So I ended up getting 4 invitations. So I thought that was pretty good for not knowing a soul in Seville to 3 weeks later getting invited to 3 casetas.
That's fantastic. And so how did you do that? So when you said, so here you are, Stephen from Boston, you've planned your ticket, you've planned your place to stay, and you said, I'm going to take a Spanish course because this gives me A, routine, and B, this gives me a chance to meet people. And then
Yeah.
you had this goal to go to the feria. So how did you go from landing on the plane, stepping off, just you by yourself, and now you have to meet people, you have to blend in communities, not have to, but you want to blend in, you want to feel, say, or tell me more about how you
You
built
have
that
to be
community.
open. Number one, you have to be open. You have to kind of realize that I was also doing this as a break from my life to get perspective. And you can't, it's what that, no, I think a lot of people go through this when they move to a new city for the first time. You go through that first phase of making friends where they're not the long-term perfect friends. You take what you can get to help you lead you towards the people that you have deep connections and interests with, right? So I would say in Spain, I immediately felt like I had a connection with the people that rented the apartment with me. They're like, oh, I partner with this American guy. You should meet him. We're having this party at the office in a couple days. Come on by. And then also, this is a funny story. So my name is Stephen Warley, not a very common name. And so Marcus, the German guy I was renting this apartment from, he said, so your name is Stephen Warley? And I said, yes. He's like, there's a Stephen Warley renting the apartment below you. And I'm like, no. He's like, let's go see if he's there. Let's go. So we go downstairs, and Stephen Warley was not there. And I met him later. He was from England. He spelled his name with a V-E-N on P-H, and he's W-O-R, and I'm W-A-R. So Stephen Warley was there for like a week, and so we hung out. We had that connection. So I think there's also you have this connection. You have a lot of expat people from all different cultures who are looking from a break from their lives, or they're looking for something. So you can cross cultures pretty easily around that connection in a place like Seville. Even in my Spanish class, I was for the 2 weeks my first 2 weeks, my last 2 weeks where I really bonded, there were 3 other women, 2 women from Germany, different parts, and a woman from Lebanon. And we were all around the same age, in our late 20s to like mid 30s. And we just all really connected like instantly. And we hung out together. We would go out with each other. We went to the feria. And that was kind of an interesting experience. I kind of subconsciously didn't realize at the time, but I was really getting away to figure things out. And I think back to, as a little plug for Unstuckable, if you are ever feeling stuck in life and you don't know what to do, I'm such a huge advocate of taking an extended trip, because at least then you're doing something fun and kind of productive. You're creating an unbelievable memory for yourself, And at the same time, you're getting away from all of the influences of your life, all of your routines and habits to have a fresh perspective about what is the next step that you really want to take.
It's like flushing and the out with the old and in with the new, and you can meet your doppelganger just the floor below you. But I think there's a lot to be said for that. You're not people are sometimes people think travel is escaping, but you weren't escaping. You were sort of
Still doing. I was
cleansing.
still working.
You were still working, and that's
Like the
exactly it.
Spanish people could not even process. They just couldn't process this concept. Like you're here. Are you on vacation? You're working. I don't understand.
Right, right,
By the way, Stephen, like every time you met with one of them, you always had to have a beer or a glass of wine or a coffee.
right.
Like everything was 2 hours. It was
That's
great.
true. Right, it's great. You say it's great, but at the time,
I couldn't live it though. I couldn't. No, it wasn't. I
right.
knew by the end of my 10 weeks. I did 6 weeks in the spring, 10 weeks in the fall. I loved it. I learned to slow the pace of my life down. Although I'm not taking my medicine right now. Getting Unstuckable launched. But I love being an entrepreneur, and that is something uniquely American. We just always think of how to do things and stuff. I remember that there were protests in front of the city hall in Seville protesting the government to get them jobs. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. Like, you can't try to figure out how to make money for yourself?
Well, let's talk about that because it can be a universal thing, right? I agree. Spirit of entrepreneur is entrepreneur here in the U.S.
Although like in Barcelona and Catalonia and the Basque Country, they are entrepreneurs. And then they
Okay.
would also say that they're not Spanish.
Right, right. Well, I think it's interesting because again, any culture in the world, there's movements like Startup Weekend, and I mean, people are sometimes need the skills and need to understand that it's a lifestyle change and it's not just vacationing, or you're not just sloughing off or whatever the case may be. There's so many
And I,
different
and I met a
perceptions.
woman from Croatia that I connected with through another networking event that this other German woman had brought me to. And she was really also around this idea. She wanted to work for herself because you have to remember this is 2 years. As in Spain, it was called the crisis with a capital T. It just you felt it everywhere. Like
Yeah,
this country about to collapse, economically.
right, right.
And so a lot of people were kind of talking about this. It's just like I think there was a huge wake up call that I mean, 40% of the adult population in Spain is employed by the government. And I think there was a just conversation that's starting to happen that probably is not feasible.
But so from what you're saying and from what this is all about, Live Work Anywhere, is that if you have a strong Wi-Fi connection and you're able to manage your day systematically, that you can run a business from anywhere.
Absolutely.
So you're all about process, and you talked about Pat Flynn, and Pat Flynn runs Smart Passive Income, and you said, "Hey, I've done this before," and tell us a little bit because I know people are curious. Like, how did Stephen do it? System and routine are critical, and you worked 4 or 5 hours. Some people say, "Don't I have to work 12 hours a day on my own business?"
Never. I
So
don't. I don't. I personally, no offense, and Chris would say I'm being judgmental right now, but I don't believe you have to work 100-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks, or even 60-hour weeks. I'm probably working 60 hours a week right now, but I know it's like a short burst of what I need to build to sustain me in the long term,
right,
because it's about I think it's about making effective use of your time, and I think that people working 100-hour weeks aren't focused on building habits, processes, and systems. They are running around and trying to put out every fire or chase after every little opportunity. I don't. So, for example, if you've noticed our artwork, we have a big yellow arrow for Get Unstuck, Unstuckable on iTunes that points at the next podcast. A huge design mistake. Now, we could be bothered by that. I mean, we're having great downloads. We don't have any research to support whether that's hurting us or not. So we're not changing it for right now. And actually, Pat Flynn, back to Smart Passive Income, picked up on that and wrote about it on his Facebook page, and gave us a huge spike in our downloads from which we've never retreated from that level.
interesting. So
So I've been accident. So I'm a big believer in happy accidents. I was an accidental entrepreneur. It took me 5 years to accept this path. And local broadcast sales was born out of I was tired of doing in-person trainings all the time, running around the country. That just seemed tiring, exhaustive. I started to realize that I didn't want to make my money from hourly labor. I don't want to be a freelancer or consultant where you have to
and why
pay,
not?
because
Tell
the
us
only
why.
way you make money is if you're the one doing the work. You have to have your fingerprints all over it. I want my business to be making money while I'm living in places like Spain or whatever else it is I'm doing. It's not that people like myself, Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas, all these other smart passive income people or passive income folks, business models don't work hard. We just work more on our own terms when we're most productive, setting up the right system so we can have these peaks and valleys, these ebbs and flows. So it's not consistently having to be at the whim of clients when they want us.
Right. So let's dive into that a little bit more because I know people are dying to know, how do I start my own business? How do I get going? So talk about local broadcasting sales. What did that,
Yeah.
what can you talk a little bit, you briefly talked about it. Can you
Yeah. So
dissect it?
it was a video database of online sales training, which the broadcast industry had not had at that point in time, and actually was still at that time in 2008 a fairly new concept. So the idea was instead of me doing an in-person training, I would do that same training, record it, but also not just put 3 hours up. I reduced it into 5-minute modules so it's more digestible because that's how people consume information on the web. But then the beauty, Libby, is that I could sell that exact same training over and over and over and over again for a lower rate than what somebody would hire me for in person. Because when somebody hires you for anything in person, that's always going to be your highest rate. So we see that with Unstuckable.
How
People
do
can
you, I'm sorry
go
to cut
ahead.
you off. Where were you able to sell it over and over again? And talk a little bit about that rate again. So you have different tiers. There's you as a freelancer, you have your set rate. But if you're not working or producing, that is zero, right? So how does the video actually become passive and what channels can you resell it on? And even though it's a lower rate, is there higher volume? Talk a little bit more about that.
So the model was we partnered with three other well-known trainers and myself, recorded videos. We only had 100 videos in the original archive. And then we decided, because we had a small amount of resources and this was just a kind of happy side project, that we would only approach state broadcast associations. So that way I wasn't going to sell to every individual radio and television station. So every state has a state broadcast association that represents the radio and television stations. I'm a big believer in gateway organizations to gain their trust, help solve a problem for them, and then they can sell your product for them because you build that instant trust because I had no brand. So this is in 2008, remember. All of a sudden, everybody's cutting everything. I don't know if I want to have these expensive in-person trainers coming to my convention. And then here comes Stephen Warley that says, for that exact same price for the entire year, I'll give you 4. Oh, that's interesting. And so at its height, we sold 27 of the 50 state broadcast associations. I worked with 32 of them. And I could say no other trainer in broadcasting has ever worked with 32 of the state broadcast associations. And we evolved the business models in different ways. Different years we'd offer live webinars. Eventually, because the online presence did actually increase my in-person speaking revenue stream again. When I did want that money, it was there so I can come back because people were seeing me every day because of the video, right? So I set up the video archive, set up a email that went out every week because salespeople were always looking for sales ideas. So that's how we kept in front of them. Had somebody in charge of our customer service to make sure everything was always going well. Really helped the state broadcast associations with promotion materials. So that way they didn't have to do too much work. I had somebody in charge of operations, had a video editor. So we had our little system that was churning along there. So they would pay one annual fee for full access to the archive, and they could either resell it to their members or they could give it to them for free. And that worked really well. And that was our model. It was very niche, but very lucrative.
So how did you offer, and this is great, just by walking through your example, I've already learned some great tips. Like you had an archive, you had videos, you went to the state broadcasting, you also had an email system, you had a team set up, you had a video editing, so you had everything in place. And how did this work then when you went to Spain?
So that would be approximately year 3, right? 2010
Okay.
would be year 3. So things were pretty much a well-oiled machine,
How do you,
So I also did a lot of prep even in advance, just to even take some added pressure off. So for example, I was in charge of editing, somebody would produce the newsletters, but I had to look at them just to make sure they had the right themes or any videos that I had to produce. All that was done in advance. So I just worked a little bit harder that winter, as we talked about. Winters in Boston, they're pretty dark, gloomy, and cold.
right.
So I don't mind working a little bit more. It's because I had that big reward of going to Spain for 6 weeks. So I then in Spain, I just had to more lightly keep things going, right, and look at anything that I had to deal with. I did a couple of live webinars while I was there, so I also, as I said, I front loaded my work capacity a little bit and eased off when I went away. That's just how I like to work. Just I did that probably more as a precaution, just because I was doing this for the first time. I didn't know what was going to happen. I think now I would probably be a little less cautious. Somebody was just saying this. I do like that feeling of, remember when you were crashing for finals at the end of any semester in college?
Yeah.
And then that week afterward felt like amazing. It was like whatever jug of your choice that you did, that's what it feels like. There's such a high of doing all this work and finishing it and then just kind of chilling out. I still kind of like working like that.
So I'm just thinking, you're talking about a lot about Spain and going back. So Unstuckable is also another lifestyle, passive income
Yes.
type of business. I mean, is that what you would create from now on? You're like, I'll never go back. It's always passive income. What are some types
Yes.
of,
I don't want to make my money hourly. In fact, we might in the short term do some online coaching, but I'm only doing that because I want to do it for the research. And it really, the vision has always been, I want to look for new ways of disseminating the knowledge that we're aggregating in a lower cost way that people can still understand. Because when you think about the coaching industry, or there's this chaos in the economy, there's lots of research showing that almost half of all Americans will be working for themselves as independent contractors at the very least by 2020. So even if you don't think of yourself an entrepreneur, this is the direction things are going in. So there's going to be a lot of need to help people make this transformation, this transition. So I think the long-term vision is that we want to provide a community support, targeted trainings that they can get that type of coaching and online learning and education at a much lower rate than if they had to hire me. I don't want them to hire me. I want to save them money.
right, right. Right. Everybody's happy. You save money and you're also having a passive income business and you're adding the most value of yourself by doing all the research and saving people that time and cost. Sounds like your other business model a little bit. Like you said, providing something of or providing lots of research at a lower cost, disseminated information that in a way that people can understand. If I got that correctly,
Yeah, I'm
that's a
never
great system.
like Chris is always like he's like he's good at aggregating information, and that takes a lot of time and curation. And I think most people would never want to do it. Most people are like, I'll pay.
Right.
Okay, I don't pay. I know there's always a way to glean this information, but it does take a lot of time,
Right.
and I'm fine with that. So I think we always talk about your kind of three personal value, your assets, your energy, your time, and your money. You need energy and time to make money, right? So energy and time are the most important. So time is the most important thing for me. So I look at my entire world as time. I look at my savings as I have 10 years saved. So Carrie and I don't have to work for a decade if we didn't want to, based on our lifestyle choice of what we want to spend every year. So you have to find out what's important to you. Which of those three assets is the most important?
That's great. You mentioned that to me before that you budgeted for 10 years, and I think that's amazing. A lot of people think that living and working from anywhere is incredibly expensive.
No.
Peop Okay, everybody thinks it's a
I was
vacation.
still making money while I was in Spain, people. Think about it, right?
Well,
Right? So
let me ask you this. Is it more expensive for you to go travel and to do this trip, or is it less? Do you spend more traveling or less traveling, or is it kind of equal? How do you budget for traveling, for living
in,
and working anywhere?
in terms of the time I had to travel and explore.
Nope, sorry. I guess in terms of your costs, your monthly
Oh, sure.
costs.
So
Yeah.
initial, like anything initial, when you do something first time, it's generally going to take you more time and more money and more energy because you're doing it for the first time, right? So I did spend, I paid for the apartment, flight. I probably spent a little bit more on food than I should have. I did cook a little bit. Now fall came around. The only reason why I went back because I was offered the people that I rented my apartment from. I was offered to come back and given a place to stay for free for 10 weeks
Oh, wow. Nice job.
if I helped
Oh,
them with their video marketing strategy. one of my skills. So Tim Ferriss talks a lot about these currencies, your currency of your time, your relationships, your knowledge, your abilities, strengths. And so they had a problem, I had a solution, and we traded. So that dramatically wiped out my accommodation costs. I even had a friend who visited, and they had for a week, and they had an apartment available upstairs while she was there, and they gave it to her for free.
Wow, that's nice. So what about your time though? The video editing also, you mentioned time being your most important asset.
Yes.
How do you justify that in terms of expenses and your time? Or
Well, I mean, everything was pretty much. I had the system. When you have a
right,
well-oiled system, that's where you save your time.
right.
If you don't have a system process, or you're not disciplined with habits, that's when you're always going to be inefficient with your time resource. So I already had that. I didn't do any of the video editing. Somebody back in Boston was doing that. In fact, I had it all planned ahead, so he knew what he was doing for the next 6 weeks, right?
Meanwhile, while you're in Spain, that's smart. I like it.
Hey, I'm
Leverage.
employing people.
Right. I love it.
There's not
Fantastic.
everybody wants to like lead and do this. So
Right. So you were paying him, you were employing him
yeah,
to work well. Okay. From the money that you were taking from your business
yeah.
that you didn't have to spend additionally on this apartment.
No, 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 no. This is all just how the businesses are run. Whether I went to Spain or
Oh.
not, he is running, doing his normal job.
Oh, fantastic.
What I'm saying
Smart.
is that I think a lot of times then people want to keep every dollar and they don't think about farming out some of their stuff. Like I'm already hiring somebody to edit our podcast. I always like to know how to do something on my own, so I really know what the system and the process is. Then I can know what I'm getting when I hire somebody out. So that's something like if you want time, if time's important to you, you have to give up control. It has to be built in how you develop your company day one.
I agree with that. I think the what is it? E-Myth, Michael Gerber's book that talks about the
Yeah.
technician, the pie versus or the pie maker versus having people help. You may make a little bit less on top, but it allows you to do things like have the system where you can get a free apartment in Spain for 10 weeks and somebody else is doing the work. So that's to me that's ingenious and
You're
that's
never
exactly
gonna,
the
you're
live
never,
work anywhere.
yeah, you're never gonna make that much more money just trying to do it all on your own. In fact, if you do it right, I think you can make more
Okay.
if that's your thing.
Right. And so I know we're a little bit short on time. I would love to talk a little bit more about, your business and the resources and everything. I mean, I think you've left a lot of awesome tips, and I think there's a lot of excitement. People want to know how do I actually live, work anywhere? How do I create this passive business? Where do I start? So one quick question: what kind of advice could you give people who are especially with no, running Unstuckable, there's a lot of people that
Sure.
are in this place that want to get unstuck. So what's your advice from the Unstuckable co-founder
Yeah.
of how can people make this decision to get unstuck
You know,
and work anywhere?
yeah, the idea of living, working anywhere is not a temporary decision. What I would say is you're actually making a lifestyle choice. It takes time. It's a transition to live and work differently. That's what you have to do first. And that means that if you are in a job that is not encouraging of sabbaticals, well, you probably need to figure out something else. If you want to have complete control of your time, like me, I'm sorry to say you're probably going to end up having to work for yourself. And it's a transitional process. It's something to get used to. These are all those habits. It doesn't happen overnight. So I've been on this journey for 14 years, everybody. I didn't get to do that Spanish adventure until 10 years into the journey. I'm not saying it's going to take you that long. That's a big part of why we're starting Unstuckable, because I was stuck for 5 years and I want to compress that time. I don't want anybody to feel like they're stuck for 5 years. That's a big part of why I want to create Unstuckable. But that's what I would say. It's a transition. It's being conscious of your habits. It's you could do, and you could also do little tests. If you've only taken 2 week vacations before, well, why not take a 3 week vacation and maybe just not get paid for that week? Put it out there to your boss and say, I realize I'm already blown through my vacation. I'm willing not to work for this week. And a lot of times when people have more advanced notice, they're much more willing to do it. If it's too close and too compressed, they're going to be less willing. And I think a big thing that we always see at Unstuckable, that if there's a big change like living and working anywhere, that's something you really want to do as a lifestyle choice. You got to start hanging out with people who want that or are doing it. That's who you're going to learn from. And just being around that culture of those people is going to increase your momentum for making that change more quickly than if you try to just do this all by yourself.
That's great. That's a really, really, really great advice. Thank you for sharing that path with us. So, one last question. If you had a ticket to go anywhere in the world right now, where would you be, or where's your next trip? If I put a ticket right in your hand, let's just envision this. What was the first place that came to mind?
South America.
Where in South America? It's a big place. You have to name one place.
I'll start off in Argentina.
Okay. That's one of my favorite spots as well. It seems to
I,
be a favorite.
have spent a lot of time in Europe. I love Europe. I like need my dose of Europe, but I would really like to check out South America.
Oh, so you haven't been to Argentina yet. Oh yeah, then
No,
you have
I
to
haven't
go.
been. I've not been anywhere in South America.
The day, talk about changing your day. You're working on East Coast time. You start at noon, go work till 5, and then you go same sort of thing to Spain and similar culture. You'll love it. Anyway, I get excited about it. So I encourage you to go on your next experiment and your next trip. And Stephen, anything else you want to say about Unstuckable?
Let's get unstuck.
Let's get
Every,
unstuck.
you can do it. It's in Livy's intro, I told her to say, what do we do? We're saving people from themselves, and we are, because you're in your own head. You create all these own roadblocks. You do have more control over your life than you think. You have already subconsciously designed the life that you are already in. You can change it. It's possible.
I love that. So everybody, let's get unstuck. Let's live work from anywhere. Check out unstuckable.co. Stephen, I'm so honored to have you here. You inspire me.
And
I
thank
love
you
hearing
so
your
much. I
stories.
mean, I love your energy. You and I like met like it was like this, right? I mean, we
Right.
just get each other, and
That's
I
it.
just love that you're doing this, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, like you said, for everybody else who's out there to become part of this community, and you'll learn from each other. Like we learn from each other, and it's fantastic. So
And
thanks again.
email us, just email getunstuck@unstuckable.co. Chris and I answer every single email like that. Nothing lights me up right now than like getting an email telling somebody like, "Oh, I want to do that. How do I get started?" Like email us. We'll totally tell you. And email Libby. Libby, what's your email? All
libtuck@gmail.com.
right. I
Yeah, but
just
no,
gave
that's
you some
fantastic.
extra work to do.
No, but no, I appreciate it. I'm the same as you. It lights me up. It fires me up to know that there are people who want more, who want this type of life, and who are willing to do what it takes and take first steps just by reaching out. And you're really you're unstuckable and you're approachable. So I think it's definitely reach out. As you can tell, Steven's a great guy. So thanks again,
Thank
and
you. I really appreciate it.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.